Dr. Christy Pretti-Frontczak, and this is another in our Q&A series where you ask a question and I give an answer. And this is part of a series that is for ECE Solutionary members. The video goes live and is available to everyone for a short period of time, and then it's archived in our members-only library. So you might want to wait till the end of this video to check out more if you're not already a member. And let's get started. So the question that came up time and time again as I closed out this year was, could you simplify things? And I was like, oh gosh, I thought I was simplifying things. And then I had a team that asked me from Spain, okay, Christy, you have all this great stuff, and every time we open something, there's another 100 things for us to look at. Do you have it all in one place? Do you have it just sort of streamlined? And I'm like, well, at least I'm consistent, and now I'm global, right? But the problem is I've gone global with my confusion. So the question is, how do we sort of take on this framework that you offer in terms of what before how, teach before the peak, recognizing and reducing stressors, embedded learning opportunities, blended practices, tiered instruction. See, it gets overwhelming fast, right? So how do we take all of those things that we've been talking about and put them in a way that is much more manageable, maybe even step by step? So if you even get the question, here comes the answer. So because I don't believe in a one size fits all, it's sometimes really hard to say, well, this is what you should do exactly in this moment, because I'm not in that moment. But we can give you a framework. And so I've tried to break it down into steps, and there'll be a few side steps because, of course, I can't be linear. So let's start by thinking about step number 1. Do you have a strong relationship with the child? And so you're like, wait. Can't we just get to how do I help this child? How do I teach this child? How do I increase their reading scores? How do I help them be more regulated? Yes, we're going to get to all of that, but we all know that the active ingredient is your relationship with the child. It's really more complex than that, but I'm going to keep myself from going off on different tangents and just say, let's start with, do you have a strong relationship? Now, for each of these steps, I'm going to ask you a simple yes/no question. There's a whole bunch of things you need to do when you answer no to my questions, but we're just going to stay on the path of yes. So, do you have a strong relationship with this child? Your answer is yes, I do. Perfect. You get to go to step number 2. Step number 2 says, do you have the right mindset? Now, what does it mean to have the right mindset? There's many layers to this. Meaning, do you have a strong emotional intelligence? Do you know how to reframe things so that you see them as stress behavior, not misbehavior? And most importantly, do you know that you have 2 jobs? Maybe 3, but again, I'm trying to keep it simple. So when I ask you, do you have the right mindset? All you need to know at this juncture is, do I understand that I have 2 primary jobs? 1, I can be the teacher, and that's a broad definition of the word teacher. It could be someone who, by their profession, is a teacher. It could be someone who believes that their title is more of a therapist or a coach or a one-on-one assistant. Could even be a parent or a caregiver. The idea is you're thinking about your job as building that child's brain. You have things to teach them. So that's your first job. The second job is what we call the boat captain. This is the person who says, I don't think the child's ready to learn. In fact, what they need at this moment is a lifeline. So the question is, do you know that you have 2 different jobs? 1, as a teacher, and 2, as a boat captain. If you're like, yes, I do know that, you're ready to go to step number 3. Do you know how to recognize and reduce the stressors that are impacting this particular child's ability to stay in the green zone or to have a wide window of tolerance? That was a lot, right? But do you know how to recognize and reduce stressors? Because we know that stressors are things that push kids, all of us, out of the green zone of optimal learning. And that's what helps us decide which job we're ready to take on. But for now, just ask, do I know how to recognize and reduce stressors that impact this child? If you answer yes, you're ready to go to step number 4. The logical question here is the child actually in the green zone? So you know that you have a strong relationship with them. You know that you have the right mindset. You know that you can recognize their instances where they're becoming hyper or hypo aroused, and you look at them and you're like, you're in the green zone. Perfect. Your answer is yes, they're in the green zone. You're ready to move to step number 5. This is our other mantra. What before how? Do you know what to teach? Now, this has got a couple of quick layers to it. Do you know human development? Meaning, do you understand the scope and sequence, the learning trajectories, the early to later, the easier to more difficult? Do you really understand what comes before and what comes later? Your job here is to really channel Vygotsky and find the zone of proximal development, the just right next step. Not too big, not too little. So do you know what's your what? And has that been influenced really by our knowledge of how development and learning takes place? Have you identified the zone of proximal development? And have you engaged in data-driven decision-making where you've looked at all the patterns in order to figure out what is your what? So again, we could unpack that for a long time, but we're going to just go, yes, of course, I know what my what is. That means you're ready for step number 6. So now that you know your what, is it a common outcome? So what is a common outcome? That is something that we're teaching all children of a certain age or grade. So it's a common milestone, a developmental expectation, a standard, something that we would believe in typical development. As long as the child's in the green zone and has plenty of support in that green zone, something that we should expect them to be learning how to do. So the question is, are you teaching a common outcome? And your answer to all these questions is yes, I'm teaching a common outcome. That takes you to question number 7. Now you're going to be like, I already answered the question about the green zone. So why is question number 7, does the child struggle in the green zone? And this is going to be your first time where if you answer no, it's actually a move forward. If you answer yes, it's a move back. So step number 7 is, does your child struggle to stay in the green zone? So a few steps earlier, we said, yes, they're currently in the green zone and I know what I'm ready to teach, but check back. Is the child still in the green zone? Or as you begin your instruction and your teaching, does that start to shift their ability to stay in the green? This will have some impact about your job in terms of how do you continue to reduce stressors, maybe even how do you offer a lifeline to allow the child to come back. So it's a bit of a dance here. But as long as you say, no, they are not struggling, that's kind of a double negative, but no, they're doing just fine. Now we're ready to create embedded learning opportunities. Create a match between what you're teaching and the child. Basically, this is keeping them in the green zone. So the way that you deliver it, the frequency with which you deliver instruction, the materials that you use, the size of the group, whatever it is that you're doing instructionally is really a match for the child, and it's keeping them in the green zone. An embedded learning opportunity is also multiple and varied. You're sprinkling them or distributing them, them being the trials, throughout the day. You're not just doing massed trials where the child gets a whole bunch of instruction all at once and then you're done working on it. So this is whether you're teaching common outcomes or IEP worthy outcomes. You want to make sure that you're distributing them throughout the day. You also want to make sure that regardless of what kind of outcome, it remains that it's a meaningful outcome to that child. So whether it's a common outcome for all children or it's an IEP worthy outcome, we're really keeping a focus on, is this meaningful? And so we're going to now create these embedded learning opportunities that we can distribute across planned, routine, and child-directed activities. And so I'm going to give you an actual example of how you can teach a common outcome during a small group peer reading activity, which is often teacher planned, during a routine activity like lunch or snack, and then during a child directed activity, let's say during center times or play time or choice time, depending on what you might call it. So when we think about the outcomes, we can oftentimes think of these as tiered or layered. And so let's think first about all children. So all children are learning this common outcome. And let's just pick this one about retelling familiar stories, including key details from that story. It's a version of a literacy outcome that, regardless of your state, is often something that we're focusing on for children, particularly those around 5 or in kindergarten. So how do we help support children retell familiar stories, including key details? And so whether we're in a teacher planned activity where it's small group, maybe you're doing some set of buddy read or peer-to-peer reading, there would be this opportunity for children to retell familiar stories and to talk about key details. But let's say you're at snack. How do you create opportunities? Well, you could read a story. You could even have menus where children could talk about times when they ordered different things from the menu, whether that was pretend play or in their real life. So they're really talking about a familiar story that is about their life. It's not just a fictional character, but it's something about their life. You could even do a menu from the school's lunch menu for the week so that it's a common experience. So it's Friday and you have some sort of menu that shows what we had on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and children can retell what they had and who was there and what they liked and different things about how things went. If it's child directed, you could have books or magazines or flyers or other print materials embedded in the block area, in the dramatic play area, even in the art area where children are able to retell different things. So it could be in the art area, you're talking about a famous artist and how they grew up and where they lived and what type of art they engaged in. And then children can talk about how they are like that particular artist and how their art is parallel to the ones they heard about in the story. So you get the idea that you can get really creative in creating these matched, sprinkled, and meaningful ways for children to learn across different activities like planned, routine, and child-directed. But